Hi. I'd like to start off by saying thank you so much for all the emails and the messages and people telling me their stories of where they've got to and how it's going for them and asking questions. And it's brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been lovely to receive them and to see that what I'm saying and what I'm doing actually is resonating with people is great. You know, I kind of knew that this is what people wanted. They just wanted some open honesty, and quite a few people have said to me that I'm brave, and I'm not brave actually at all, because to be brave you have to be getting over something. You have to be getting past fear or something like that and doing something anyway. You know, bravery is doing something in the face of adversity, but there is no adversity. I'm just free, and so when you're free, you don't need to be brave. What I want to talk about today is something that seems to be quite prevalent in emails, and one of them said, I'm so terrified of myself that I'm terrified of being on my own. And the general theme seems to be that people cannot bear to be in their own head at all. And I started thinking about that a lot yesterday. A lot of things have happened actually in the last few weeks, and it's sort of come to a point with this subject. And so what I thought I'd do is explain what you actually face, from my perspective anyway, because I'm sure what they'll face is different because we've all got a different head. But I want people to realise that it's not as scary as you think in there. It's not it's not monsters. I found that in the last few months with the fact that I've lost a lot of weight, and I live in a small town, and so even though you don't necessarily know everyone, you kind of know people by, that's them, you know, you just get to know people, even if you've never spoken. And I've been approached by several people that are women that have wanted to know how I've lost weight, and you know, they sort of come up and say, hello, I'm sorry to bother you, I was just wondering, I've noticed you and you've lost a lot of weight, you've well done. I was wondering how you've done that. And my answer is, I started doing a lot of meditation and getting to know myself, and I stopped feeding the crying children with food and started feeding them with love. And the response to that response is terror, mainly, to the point of one woman actually more or less ran away. She sort of, right, thank you, and was off. You know, it's kind of like I've said, they've walked up and they've asked me, and I said, I mince up babies and drink them. You know, or I found the love of Jesus Christ, something equally as ridiculous. It's, you know, just the thought that they would have to look inside themselves. They're absolutely shit it. The funny thing is that if I said to them, well, what I do is I take 12 frogs, half a dozen slugs, little bit of dog poo, put it in a blender, blend that up and drink it 3 times a day, they'd be like, brilliant, give me the recipe, I'm up for that, I'll do that. But say, look at yourself, no thank you. So anyway, what I'm going to do is tell you I've had sort of 3 real encounters with the terrible thing, as we think of it as, that have been sort of significant. And so I thought I'd go through each of them, and hopefully it'll be helpful. The first time was I was doing the normal thing of sitting and allowing something to come, and what started to come were horrible pictures of everything that I could see I'd seen in like horror films, and it just things that I'd accumulated through the years from my mind, mainly things my mind had made up for me. I was having pictures of these things coming and I was thinking, oh shit, this is a bit daunting. And it felt like it was evil. And I was a bit scared, I must admit, because I didn't know what I was going to find. And it came to me when it was sort of time to take action, that there was this big door in front of me, and it was inside whatever this room was. And every time I thought about opening the door, I imagined like these faces coming at me, like it'd be like the girl from horror films with face white with a black around the eyes and a big slitty bloody mouth. That kind of, just the things that made me the most scared, I suppose, when I'd seen them. You know how those sort of images, when you see a film like that, they always jump out at you and make nearly do one. But yeah, so that's what I thought. That's the sort of thing that I was thinking, it might stab me. What if it kills me? I was thinking, how do I know that it hasn't got the power to overpower me and take me down? But at the time, I had the sort of loving presence there going, go on, open the door. I don't know. I was there for ages outside that door with my hand on the handle, thinking, and he's going, go on. And I eventually I built up the courage, and I opened the door, and it was a barn, like a barn for horses, and there were sort of stalls that horses would be in, and it was sort of old. It felt old and smelly and not very nice. And I was thinking it was going to come down from the rafters at me or something. All of a sudden, this thing was going to shoot at me, and I started looking round, and then in the corner, sat on a piece of sort of dirty old sack, was a little me, and she didn't look particularly evil or frightening or anything. And I was thinking, well, maybe I'll get near and she's gonna change. She's gonna, But I walked up to her and I said, hello. What are you doing here? And she sort of looked around and looked a bit down to the ground, and she didn't want to tell me. She was coy, She was like just sort of looking everywhere but at me. And so I just had to talk to her, and I said, why are you here? Why are you in this room? And she said, because I'm evil. And I said, what do you mean? Why do you think that? And she said, Mum said I was evil. I said, so why are you in here? And she said, because it's safer if I stay in here, because evil people do evil things, and if I go out there I might hurt somebody. And that's all it was. That's all she was. And I reassured her. I just sat and I said, you're not evil. It's a mistake. Mummy was just in a mood, and it's not true. You're not evil at all. And I told her about the village, and I said, there's a place I can take you where there's lots of people, and they're all waiting for you, and there's everything there that you could want. There's there's everything. And she was looking and said, sweets? Are there any sweets? Oh yeah, loads of sweets. Puppies, kittens, baby ducks, all the things you like, they're all there. And I got her to come with me, and she was absolutely delighted and thrilled and welcome with open arms. She was just welcomed in, and she got it and was fine straight away. And that was the first encounter. And going into it, I really was quite petrified of what I was going to find. And what I found was just this little girl. And then it kind of didn't come. It felt like I'd sorted that. I thought that was all over. And it didn't rear its head again for several months. And then the night that I mentioned Unconscious TV, when I spent the evening with shame, felt like the final thing actually at the time, because afterwards I had no more anxiety at all, and it was completely clear. It felt completely clear. But the night with shame, that came like again, the clearness, and then the shame feelings started to come into me, and then I had to see everything that I'd ever done that was shameful, and all the things that I'd held on to as being shameful. And it was horrible. It was the most horrible of them all, out of everything I'd faced. I've realised that actually everything comes to you in a time when you're able to receive it. It doesn't come to you before you're ready for it. I think that probably what happens is if you're not ready for it, if it tries to come for you, it's pushed away before you don't grab it. But anyway, yeah, shame. So I spent about 3 hours in that place of shame. I allowed it to come into me. I sat with the feeling of it, and I felt it as just a feeling, how it actually felt in my body, and it was so uncomfortable. It kind of started down in the base of my stomach. It went up the front of me, up my spine, into my neck and my throat, and my lips were tingling. And I had a headache. I felt this pulsing in my head, and I allowed all that to just be. And I was looking at it from the watcher point of view, because that's what the bit that I enjoy is the understanding and the seeing and the real feeling of it, and just allowing the feeling and being with it. It's just it's so enlightening, and it's intriguing. They're all intriguing when you're looking in on them, because you realise that they've been what's making you up and making you who you are and how you are, and it's kind of like an undoing of all that, because as you see it and understand it, it loses any grip it has on you. So yeah, back to shame. It went on, for about 3 hours, and I was curled up in a ball in a horrible place, but again at the same time watching. So even though it feels really awful, at the same time there's part of you watching it going, God, this is brilliant, so it never feels like you can't take it. So at the end of this, of seeing all the things that I'd done, I then had this vision of shame. It was me being carried into my village, and then by this sort of big black shape sort of thing. It didn't have any real form, but it was big and tall, and it got into the village, and all the people were stood around in the square, and he threw her down, and she rolled across the floor, and then sort of landed at the feet of the crowd, and nobody did anything. Everyone just looked, and as she landed, she curled up in a tiny ball, and I could feel her feelings, and she just felt like the most wretched creature that had ever walked the planet. She was just she just wanted to be dead, because she just couldn't bear the feeling of shame that she had. And as she was lying there curled up, she was willing the crowd to kick her to death, because she just wanted it to be over. And I went to her and was comforting her, and at the same time, as I took action, my sort of people started to take action, and they started to come around her and lift her up, and eventually they carried her away, and she was sort of unable to walk really, because she was so wretched, and they were supporting her and carrying her, and she was just saying, I can't bear it. And then one of the me's in the crowd stopped and stood in front of her and put her hand on her shoulder and said, it's okay, you don't have to bear it, you don't have to bear this alone, we will share it, we'll all take a part. And so then everybody else in the crowd put their hand on somebody else's shoulder until everybody was connected, and then it was as if it transferred from being entirely in her, and a little bit went into everybody, and so the weight was shared by everybody. And as that happened, she was able to stand and to sort of come to a place where she could bear it and she could feel free. And they sort of took her off lovingly. And I watched all this, and it was quite beautiful and overwhelming. You know, I stood there feeling like, oh God, that's so lovely. And then I suddenly realised that there was something that threw her down. And so that thing must be behind me. And I sort of stood thinking, oh shit, what the hell is it? And it took me a while to pluck up the courage to turn around, because a few years previously, when we had some money problems, I'd gone into a really, really dark place because lack of money, or the thought of losing my house and my stability absolutely petrified me. And I'd gone into a really dark depression. And when that happened, I started having night terrors. And I had them several times. And it is absolutely terrifying because you wake up, but you don't know what's happened, but you're just petrified. It feels like you've been chased out of hell. That's the feeling. It's like you've just managed to escape from hell, and they were just on your tail to pull you back in, but you've woken up. And I kind of felt that it was that. Whatever it was that I'd felt was chasing me when I was having the terrors was coming, and that was what was behind me. And I plucked up the courage and I turned around, and it was a cartoon of like a cartoon sort of cowboy type thing from a cartoon I'd seen when I was a child, so a big Stetson and a big moustache, and he was going, come on in, put 'em up, I'm going to drag you to hell. And I just looked at it and thought, oh, and I started to laugh. And it was just ridiculous. And he kept saying, and I'm going to drag you to hell. And I just said, but you're not though, are you? Because I knew that it couldn't, it had no power. And he just sort of stopped and said, no. And so I just said, do you want to come in to the village? Because I thought, well, you might as well join everybody else. But it was a male, which was funny because I'd not had any male feeling energy before. So he kind of sloped off, really, just sort of walked off towards the town. And I was really surprised. And, so I wasn't expecting that at all. And, so it felt like I had no substance. And after that night, I felt absolutely brilliant. It was as if anxiety, which had been a very, very close friend of mine for a long time, just had given up. But it's funny actually, because a couple of nights before that happened, I'd actually had an encounter with anxiety, which was also unexpected because this had never happened before. But I was thinking about something was playing out, and all of a sudden I felt anxiety come into me. But because I'd got so used to anxiety sort of being there, and I no longer loathed and hated it, when it came in I said, oh, hi anxiety. And it said, look, could I have a word? And that hadn't happened, that I'd been approached before. And I said, yeah, of course, And then the next thing, we were in a room, it was like a cottage lounge. We were both sat in big armchairs, and she was sat opposite me, and she was just me, but more frazzled looking. And I said, so yeah, what's up? What can I do for you? And she said, my heart's just not really in this anymore. I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, it used to be an easy job. I used to light a match and the whole thing would fly up. But now I light a match, it either burns down and burns my fingers, or somebody just leans over, smiles and blows it out. And to be honest with you, when I'm not feeling all of that, I'm seeing the faces of the little kids, and I just haven't got the heart for it really anymore. I just, I can't be bothered, so I'm just thinking that I'm just going to call it a day. And I think I'll go. I think I'm going to go. And me on the other side, sat there, on the outside to it, was looking kind of, oh yeah. And inside, I'm thinking, when it said it was going to go, I'm thinking, yes, great. But I said, where are you going to go? And she said, well, where is there to go? Where can I go? And I realised that she couldn't go anywhere outside of me. And so I said, well, you can stay here. You can stay here with us. Come into the village. You are part of us after all. You've only been doing what you thought you needed to do. And if, you don't feel you need to do it, you're more than welcome. I mean, you're welcome anyway, whatever. So come on in. Come in and join everybody. And she said, yeah, really. She was kind of, are you sure, sort of? And I said, yeah, of course. And I took her out, and as I went out the cottage, we were in the village, and I said to everyone, look, Anxiety's here, and she wants to come and join us, and everyone was thrilled. Yay, come on. And they took her off. And yeah, that was quite strange. So I don't actually know whether Anxiety had already gone before Shame came, and that the fact that Anxiety had given up its job actually meant that Shame was able to come through, because the Anxiety wasn't holding it at bay. And then after that, if I had any internal feelings that I had labelled it as anxiety, if I thought, oh, Anxiety's back, I would just get a picture of her, and she'd be meditating under a tree, and I would just get her going, not me, and back into her meditation. So I started realising that these other feelings I was having weren't anxiety at all. And I realised I'd labelled lots of feelings as anxiety. And I thought about going to London to do the conscious TV thing, because I'd never done anything like that before. I'd actually never even talked about this until I went and talked to them in any detail. I had little snippets of conversation about it, but I'd never talked about it as, a thing. And so when I thought about that, I got a feeling, and I thought, oh, I'm a bit anxious about that. And then Anxiety did the nope. And I realised it wasn't anxiety, it was excitement. And I realised I'd never really allowed excitement, because I'd been labelling it wrong. And so I was someone that never really got excited about anything, really, very much. And yeah, so that sort of opened up a door to be able to see other feelings. So since then, since the night with Shame, I hadn't had any anxiety or any inner feelings of trauma or tension at all, and that went on for several weeks. I was in London for a week, and where before I would have found that quite stressful, I didn't at all. I wasn't in London, I was in England. I was in London, then Bournemouth. And yeah, life had really just taken on a really smooth way of being. And then about, 3 weeks ago, I suppose, I had a situation where I went to see my son, and it's something I always do on a Tuesday, because he was off work on a Tuesday, and we'd always spend, my son's very switched on, and he's my person that I can talk to about my sort of spiritual side, because he's quite awake himself, and we have a really close, and we talk about what's happened to us in the week, sort of thing. And he's a really lively, bouncy, like a puppy, full of joy and happiness and love. And this day I went to see him, and he wasn't himself, and I didn't really, I was sort of shocked. He didn't say he wasn't feeling himself, but I just, after a while, I said, are you okay? And he said, yeah. And then he told me about some little problem he had, and that he was feeling a bit down, and we sort of chatted about it, but it didn't, left there feeling a little bit uneasy, and that kind of built up as I drove home. And then I was sort of feeling this, because my baby wasn't right. My baby wasn't feeling right, and that didn't sit well. In any mother, it doesn't sit well if your children are not feeling right. And I came home, and my partner and I sat down to have dinner, and we were chatting, but I wasn't right, I wasn't quite right, but I wasn't showing that, it wasn't coming out as, and then we had sort of like we didn't have an argument, but I said something and then he didn't respond how I kind of wanted him to. I was talking about one of my things, one of my realisings, and he didn't get what I was saying straight away, and I was just, oh, don't worry about it, it's fine, and then it felt like we had this sort of little bit of anxiety between us, and he said to me, "You're right," and I said, "No," I said, I just felt that, I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." It was that sort of feeling, "Yeah, I'm fine. It's I feel like you're being a bit funny," and he was like, I'm not doing anything. And then I came and sat downstairs, and I realised I let the feeling that I was feeling about my son come into me. I was thinking, what is this? What am I feeling about him? What's this set off in me? And I realised it was rejection. It came into me, and it's such an uncomfortable feeling, and it rages through us all the time. We're constantly feeling rejected, and we're either feeling rejected or we're rejecting because we reject because we feel rejected. And I spent an evening with that. I went through the thing with my son, and I realised that what was at the core of it was that I felt that he was maybe growing out of his mummy. It was like I felt he was, because he's got a girlfriend now, he's living with her, and I could see that, that's what happens as we get older. We move away from our parents and into the person that we're with. It's a natural thing that happens in humanity and in animal, well, as I've said before, I think we're all just in a differently evolved animal. But so I sat with that, and I realised that I felt rejected. The mummy in me felt rejected. And then I spent some time with rejection, and I felt afterwards, when it cleared and it passed, I felt really good about it. I thought, it's another thing that I sorted out that I didn't actually know needed sorting. And since then it's been absolute clearness, really. Well, that's what it felt like. And then what happened next was, this is kind of the big one, but I want to make sure that I start at the beginning and include all the details, because it's quite important, I think. I remember what started it off. I noticed, because my mind is virtually clear now of chatter and noise, I noticed that I rejected a thought, or I thought something was rejecting a thought. I noticed a thought had come as an image, and I pushed it away. And I thought, what is still pushing? There's something in there that's still pushing something. What is it? So I went into myself and saying, waiting for this thing to reveal itself to me. But nothing came. And then I realised that it wasn't something in me that was rejecting thoughts. It was me that was rejecting. Me, Deborah, me. Not all the bits inside of me that I could look in at. It was actual me. And as that became clear, it was as if two clouds, one dark and one light, came together over each other and sort of melded. And as that melding happened, it felt like something entered me from the left-hand side, but not from outside of me, from inside of me, but it's like it slid across. And as it slid across, the me, Deborah, moved to one side. And this feeling was unlike anything that I'd ever really felt before, because it didn't have anything in it. It didn't hold any of the emotions at all. It was completely free of all of it. Love, joy, happiness, pain, all of the emotions. It was just completely in the moment, and it was all it was interested in was what was happening right now. But nothing was alive in it. it was really quite strange. And I had some children's lollipops on the table. I'm quite partial to a lollipop. And it reached out, picked up a lolly, unwrapped it, and started eating it. And I was sat here, and it was eating it, was looking at it, thinking, like, it was a round one with a pineapple in the middle. It's got a pineapple in it, and it was sucking it. And I was sort of watching this and thinking, what is this? And then as I sort of shut my eyes and went into it, and we were in Maria, the town that I live in, and there's a place where there's an avenue of trees. It's really beautiful, and some fountains down the middle. And she was sat on a bench with the lollipop, and she was just sat there eating the lolly, and not interested really in anything else except for the lolly. That was what she was doing. And I was watching her, and then I noticed out of the corner of my eye that sort of behind me there were pictures playing of atrocities, of things, horrendous things. And within the pictures, there were two pictures that I had actually seen earlier in the day on Facebook. Somebody had posted 35 iconic pictures through history, and there were two in particular that I'd really kind of I'd actually spent time looking at both of them and trying to understand them. What was the thinking behind this? One was a Nazi it was a pit of bodies, and there was a man kneeling by the pit and with a gun pointed at his head, and then behind were all these legs of other Nazi people that were stood watching, and in the pit there were limbs and arms and things sticking out, kind of. And the look on this man's face was just, I don't know, it was actually quite peaceful. But I looked at it for quite a while and just tried to figure out, why do these things happen? Why do we do these sort of things? What is in people to make them do that? And the other picture was of a man, and he was holding out a piece of bread over some starving children, and they were reaching up for it, and he was dangling it over them and laughing. And I looked at that and I felt such coldness in me when I saw that anyone could sink to that level. How must they feel inside to be able to sink to such a deep level of hatred and evil? So these two pictures came, and I looked back at the little girl, the gaudy girl. Felt like she was sort of gaudy. And I just looked at her sideways like, why? And she just looked up, lolly in the side of the mouth, sticking out. And she said, I do it all. And I sort of thought, hey, she said, I do it all. You can't cherry pick. She said, I do all of it. When I am in you, when I am being you, I am your servant, and I will carry out anything that you ask me to carry out, and I will do it impartially. And I said, but how can you do that? I have to. I do it all. But I realised that from the perspective of this part, it did it all from that place of nothing. It had no desire for anything to be any way other than it was, and that it was always both parts of everything. And then I felt this feeling come into me. I said, how do you do it? Yeah. And then this feeling came into me, and it was a feeling I'd felt before, and I realised it was the thing that I was the most terrified of. The feeling wasn't horrible. It was actual complete lack of morality. It was the place that you go into when you've moved away from your morality, and it's the thing that takes you over, and it has a feeling of it's a pleasurable feeling. It feels it doesn't care about anything, and it actually feels joy in the suffering of others. It's a powerful feeling. It felt all powerful, and joy at suffering. And then from that feeling of it coming into me, the godlike girl said to me, look again. And then I looked at the things that it had shown me again from this perspective. And I saw the joy that the people that were doing the atrocities felt when they were doing them. And it was uncomfortable on one part. The part of me that was so rejecting of that part of me was like, oh, bloody hell. But the other part that was seeing it from that perspective, I saw how proud the man with the gun was, how absolutely thrilled he was to be doing that and being photographed, and how the joy that all the Nazis that were stood around were feeling, because they felt they were doing the right thing. And you have to harness that energy to be able to do terrible things. And when it comes into you, it gives you that ability. And I saw the man with the bread, and I felt his joy as he was dangling it over them, and he was loving it. He was just absolutely loving the power he had over these poor little creatures. There was no, at that point within these people, there was no regret or animosity towards themselves whatsoever. They absolutely felt that they were in the right and were loving what they were doing. And it was quite shocking. And it was a frightening place to be, because there was part of me that thought, what if I can't get out of this place and I'm now a monster? I had visions of me massacring my whole town. But what if I go out on the rampage and I kill everybody? Because when you're in that space, you realise that you're completely capable of anything. But luckily for my town, I came back out of it. And as I did so, I understood everything. Because it was the final thing within me that I'd been rejecting and unable to understand. Because it was a terrifying place. Because I could remember the times that I'd felt not the feeling where I would wanted to go out and kill people, but that feeling of sweetness at the adversity of others. You see it in children. It wakes up in us when we're little, when we're tiny. I remember when my son was 2, and he had a friend that was the same age. So my son was probably about 2 years, 3 months, and this little boy was anything between that and probably nearly 3. I don't know, it could have been anywhere in that span. And his mum and I both had our second sons at the same time, and we made friends through the kids. And I was round at her house, and she went into the kitchen to make a cup of tea. And her little boy, not knowing that I was watching, he walked up to his tiny brother, and he pinched him really, really hard. He got hold of a bit of his leg, and you could see him. And the baby started to scream. And as the baby screamed, you saw the look of delight cross his face. And I only remembered this last night, this story of the little boy. And I thought, that's it. It wakes up in us. And it is in us, and we don't like it. Because when we're in that place, when we're in that feeling, anything goes. When we come back into our morality, we step back into what we really are, we're horrified at what we've done. And so we reject it and we push it away because we don't want to have it. You know, it's a scary, scary place to be. I mean, you see people that go right into it, and that's when atrocities happen, when people become murderers and do awful things. And you realise also that they can't help it, because when you're in that energy, you can't help it. You can't, whatever energy you're in at any time, you can never push it away. You can put, happiness and stuff, your mind can push away, it appears. But the negative energies, it feels like when they're in you, you know, you just have to wait them out until they go. So, so I came out of that, and then I stood with the little girl, and then I felt something inside of me equalise. It was as if everything just equalised, and I became that feeling of nothingness. In it, that felt like it was my main state of being from that moment onwards, and I went into that feeling, which took me out of my mind into the bigger picture. And it was as if when I got there, all this time I've been thinking that I was going to get to the end of this thing and that I was going to open the door, and I don't know what I thought was going to be in there. I really don't, actually. Harps and cherubs, probably. But when I opened the door and went in there was nothing in there. Nothing. Nothing existed in there. Nothing human existed in there. To start with, I was a little bit disappointed, actually. It's like, you're searching and searching and searching for something, and then when you find it, it's nothing. It's just a big nothing. So I was kind of a bit disappointed and a bit surprised, but it felt nice, because no emotion at all was activated within it. But I was thinking, so we're nothing. It turns out that after all of it, after all the searching, at the very bottom, there's nothing there. But then I realised that everything happens within the nothing. We give the nothing life. We are the life that is created out of the nothing. And it took me a few days, actually, to sort of be completely comfortable within that space. And it's been quite a funny time. What was I going to say? What else I was going to say? Oh yeah, it's got me thinking about, on a biological level, that what happens is, hang on, let me go back a little bit. What I came to realise with this this part of me, this kind of the nasty side, I kind of looked at it from different levels. First of all, the kind of level of, because I was in the sort of the mind realm from that, and the conclusion I kind of came to is that when we're born, we come into our life and we are given all of the emotions, all of the ones that take us completely all the way to what we really are, which is lovingness. So it goes all the way from pure love all the way to the opposite end, where there's no love at all, absolute lack of love. And when we come into our lives, it's like God picks off a piece of himself and says, right, I'm going to put you there, and you're going to go off and have a life. But if you know what you are, then what's the point of the game? I want to know what I am when I'm not what I am. And so it puts in absolute unconditional love, and it also puts in the absolute opposite of unconditional love. And then it sends himself off, because it's all God, the unconditional and the conditional, it's all God, it's all the same thing. And he goes off to play the game, and that's what we are. We are the game in action. And so within our mind, the battle begins between this snidey, nasty part, because that's what it feels like. It feels nasty, it feels snidey, slimy, it's snide, it's cunning, it's deceptive, it's everything, it's the epitome of pureness. It's the absolute opposite of that. And so when we come into our life, that is the battle. The battle is, well, not the battle, the game is to see which one wins. Who's going to come out on top. And it will change throughout your life. Sometimes one part is more in charge, and sometimes the other part's more in charge. And sort of realising that you're just you're playing a game. It is all just a game that God's playing with himself. And when I realised that, I saw that was the thing that is behind it all, is this opposite thing. That is the thing that we're so scared of and we hate so much. because the thing is, the way that it lives is through our negative emotions. Without our negative emotions, it actually has no ability to function or even be, because it is born out of the dark side. It's born out of our dark stuff. And so its main priority and job, it's easy, is to get you feeling shit and to get these emotions playing through you, because if they're not, it's not there. And so it's terrified of disappearing, of not existing, because it exists in the game, because that's the game that was created. And so it wants to win, and it will do anything to win, because it actually has no morals at all. And so it plagues you constantly, because it's trying to get you to release the emotions to get it going. And I realise it's actually a chemical game that we play. If you look in our mind, with the in our brain, like the hypothalamus sends out to the endocrine system the hormones that are required. And so you've got your I haven't got a very good memory, so I wrote these things down. The sympathetic nervous system, that is where it sends out the cortisone and adrenaline, and that's what that part of the brain lives off of. That's what fuels it. And so that's what it's trying to do constantly, is to get you to release those chemicals. And when you start meditating and you start getting with yourself and clearing yourself, you start releasing more of the good chemicals, the serotonin, the dopamine, and the nice feeling ones. And the more of those you release, the less you're releasing the bad ones, and so the less grip it has on you. But when you start to do it, obviously it's terrified that it's going to lose it, so it goes into overdrive. And when you have a lot of stuff inside you that you haven't cleared out, it's got free rein, because it can go through you and whisper. It goes through, it will do anything to get you to release what it needs. It's like the thing with food. I realised when I saw it fully that would be the part that would be whispering to me, go and have a biscuit, go and have a biscuit, have a cake, go on, have a cake. Because it knew that it could persuade me to have it, and as soon as I had it, it could then tell me I was a fat cow, so it would trick me constantly, trick me into doing things so that I would release the chemicals it needed to survive. But of course, as I started to clear things out, there's less and less things that it could ignite, and I'm listening to it less and less, and the good chemicals are in play more and more. So it's gradually lost its grip more and more and more and more, until in the end, the way I was able to face it was because it had no hold on me anymore. It wasn't able to light fires under things and set things off. And so that was how I was able to look it right in the eye. Also that night with the when I saw it in front of me, it actually played out, the story sort of played out, because I sort of go in and out of the story, so something else will happen that gives me more enlightenment on what's going on, and then I went back into the story, and I sat and chatted with it, and this being in the feeling and being in my own feeling simultaneously, so accepting I'm both parts, and I'm this awful evil thing, and I'm also this pure light thing. Both of them are me, they're both in me, and sat and talked to it as if you had been playing against someone in a game, and then at the end of the game you talk over the game. And she was going through things that she'd done and going, remember that? Yeah, that was me. And I was thinking, yeah, I know. Yeah, thank you for that. And it kind of felt like I kept laughing actually, because it all seemed so absurd, what I've been doing all this time. And but then it came to a point where it started interjecting again, because I hadn't been listening to it, but then I started to notice its interjections, and I was thinking about something else, and it started up with its criticism again. But I wasn't buying it, but I was noticing it. And then it started having a sort of I suppose it was its sort of swan sort of cry, and swan song. It was shouting like, "You'll never get rid of me. You'll never get rid of me. I'm going to be with you forever." And it was trying to to take me over, but it was like it's its last ditch attempt to get any control back. But I wasn't really having it. And at one point it was doing this. It was like shouting, and this is all still happening in this little square. And the good part of me, the little girl from when I was probably about 12, she suddenly walked in, and she had a shotgun, and I saw her put the cartridges, shut the shotgun, and she shot it straight through the head. Oh. And it sort of dissolved down to the ground. And I looked at her and she gave me a nod, like, don't worry, I've sorted that. And I was like a little bit surprised and proud of her as well. I thought, yeah, good on you. But then it sort of reformed again. It popped back out again. But again, it was sort of still cartoony. It had become cartoony by now. And it was stood there telling me that it was going to get me and I could never get rid of it, and that even if I wasn't going to listen to it, it was still going to come everywhere I went. It was still going to go on and on and on at me, and it was being really smug and it was just full of its own self-importance, and all my people suddenly felt like they were behind me. All the people from me, all my emotions were there. Anxiety was there, and pain and fear, and they all stood with all the little children and all the ones that had been set free, and it was like I was stood right at the front, and they kind of went out like a big triangle behind me, and she was going on and on and on and on, having an absolute conniption really of shouting and saying she was never going to leave us alone. And I was just watching and thinking, I don't know, is that right? Is that true? Maybe that is true. Maybe it is always going to be there. And, it's not the end of the world. I don't have to listen to it. It's a little bit annoying if it is going to from now on follow me around and interject on everything again. It would be a bit annoying, but not the end of the world, because I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to take notice of what it's saying. And anyway, it was good. So we all just stood there watching it, and it shouted something along the lines of, yeah, well, I will drag you to hell, and you ain't gonna like it there. And then I heard behind me, I suddenly heard this sort of sound, and then this giggling started out, and everybody started to laugh, and it was like everything it said, we all found more and more hilarious, and we were all hysterical with laughing. And it was getting more and more frenzied the more we laughed. And then suddenly fear stepped forward and started to walk towards it. And the laughter stopped, and everyone just sort of looked and thinking, what the hell's going on? And fear got right up to it, and it was looking smug as hell because it saw fear coming. It was like, oh, hello, fear. It had that kind of attitude. And fear got right up to it, sort of almost nose to nose, and then stood there for several seconds, and there was just silence as everybody watched. And then fear turned round, looked at us, and went, "Party!" And everyone just erupted, and all of a sudden there was confetti everywhere, and rose petals and blossom, and it sort of turned into a fairground, and everyone started running and getting on rides and this thing was in the middle, but no one was taking any notice of it at all, and it just sort of turned into like a vapour and dissolved. And I realised that is how you get rid of it. Is you don't pretend it's not there. You don't care anymore that it's there. That's the only way to get it to go away, is to not care that it's there. And once you do that, you're free. It's that easy. So yeah, I hope that made sense. I'm not sure that it did. I think I got a little bit confused a couple of times, or a little bit stuck. So hopefully it'll make sense. I'll do the thing again of watching it back, and if it's okay, I'll post it. Luckily this time I didn't show you my knickers. You can email me if you like. The email address is probably underneath in the comments bit on YouTube. I'm not very good at technicals. So yeah, nice to speak to you again, and speak to you again soon. Bye.